You know that feeling. It's Sunday night, the knot in your stomach, heart racing before your alarm even goes off. You tell yourself it's just stress, anxiety, burnout. But what if I told you that everything they told you about burnout is dead wrong? This is where it ends. This is where you can learn the truth and the way out. They told you it's burnout. They lied. It's nurse trauma. Your body never lied. The system did. I'm Dr. Lorre Laws. Let's heal the root cause together. They told you it's burnout. They lied. It's nurse trauma. Your body never lied. The system did. I'm Dr. Lorre Laws. Let's heal the root cause together. Don't use that intro. I'll regard another one. The lie that made you think that you're the problem. In 1974, psychologist Herbert Freudenberger published the first scientific paper on burnout. He was working in the free clinic movement in New York, studying volunteers who were exhausted, detached, cynical. He called it burnout because they looked like buildings that had been burned from the inside out, and the healthcare system saw an opportunity, a weapon that they could use to control you, keep you compliant. Burnout means that it's your problem. Trauma means that it's their problem. Think about it. If you're burned out, you need better coping skills, more resilience, time management training, a yoga mat, and a gratitude journal. But if you're traumatized, they need safer staffing, violent prevention, organizational accountability, actual system change. So they chose burnout, and they've been choosing it for over 50 years. Every wellness seminar was a Band-Aid. Every resilience workshop, every pizza party in the break room, all designed to think that the problem is you. Well, I worked with a nurse recently. Her name is Camille, and her story is like every nurse's story. She came to me after 7 years in the ICU. She started out idealistic, passionate, ready to save lives. But by the time she reached out, she was utterly depleted and struggling to get through each day, at work and at home. She had attended every burnout workshop her hospital had offered. She downloaded the meditation apps. She meal prepped on Sundays. She practiced sleep hygiene like it was a religion. She tried journaling, yoga, boundary setting. She bought the essential oils, did a gratitude practice. She went to therapy. She did everything right, everything they told her to do. And she still ended up having panic attacks in the middle of the night or on her way to work. Even on her days off, her heart would race, her stomach would churn, and her jaw would clench. She couldn't sleep. And when she did sleep, she had nightmares. They all centered on being stuck in quicksand, like muck, or drowning, or trying to escape from something, but couldn't. Her marriage was in trouble. She'd stopped seeing her friends. She'd gained about 40 pounds because she was stress eating just to feel something. She thought that there was something wrong with her, that she was weak, that she wasn't cut out for nursing after all. She came to the conclusion that she was broken. But she wasn't. She was injured, and there's a difference. When something's broken, it's unfixable. But when you're injured, healing is possible. Let's talk about the data that they don't want you to see. In 2009, there was a wake-up call that the system ignored. So what if it's not burnout? Let me show you the research that they've been burying for over a decade. Back in 2009, researchers Mueller and colleagues published a groundbreaking study in the Journal of Depression and Anxiety. They studied over 300 nurses working in intensive care units, and what they found should have changed everything. 22% had PTSD symptoms. 18% met the full diagnostic criteria for PTSD. Think about that. Nearly 1 in 5 ICU nurses had full PTSD in 2009. The same diagnosis we give to combat veterans, to sexual assault survivors, to people who have survived natural disasters. Did the system address this? No. They doubled down on the burnout narrative instead. Translation: if you have PTSD, we'll just spin it to look like you're burned out instead. This is why the traditional self-care approaches to healing don't work. They're great for symptom management, but it doesn't get to the root cause healing that nurses need. So what happened next? Absolutely nothing. That study came out in 2009, 16 years ago. And what did the healthcare industry do? They kept calling it burnout. They kept pushing the resilience training. They kept blaming the nurses. A handful of us started pushing back. I did research and wrote the book, Nursing Our Healer's Heart. Dr. Karen Foley developed the middle range theory of nurse psychological trauma. A few others started naming what was really happening. But the system, radio silence. They weren't going to do the work, so I did it myself. I went back to school, got my PhD, became a nurse and neuroscientist, and started specializing in nurse-specific trauma. I spent 5 years analyzing the research. I mapped every symptom that gets labeled as burnout and compared it to clinical trauma literature across 5 domains: physical, cognitive, emotional, behavioral, and existential. I analyzed hundreds of studies. I interviewed even more nurses. Stop that. I interviewed hundreds of nurses. I looked at the data from every angle, and here's what I found. 91% of nurses now have at least one symptom of PTSD. Nearly 1 in 4 meet the full diagnostic criteria for PTSD. These are not burnout symptoms, they're PTSD symptoms. The exact same symptoms we see in combat veterans, first responders, and survivors of violence. And the system's response to this silent epidemic? Well, 83% of nurses report having few to no resources to address nurse trauma. The system's response is unconscionable. 83% of nurses have nothing. Now, let me ask you something. Do combat veterans get told to light a candle and take a bubble bath when they come home from deployment? Do law enforcement officers get handed a gratitude journal after a traumatic call and get told to go work on their resilience? Do firefighters get a pizza party after pulling bodies out of a burning building? No, these professions, male-dominated, high-trauma professions like nursing, have systems in place. They have protocols, peer support teams, mandatory debriefings after critical events, access to trauma-informed mental health care, organizational policies that recognize trauma as an occupational hazard. When a police officer is involved in a shooting, they're put on administrative leave. They're required to see a counselor. They're not allowed back on duty until they've been cleared. When a firefighter witnesses a traumatic incident, there's a critical incident stress debriefing. The team processes it together, and then there's follow-up care. But nurses, we watch people die every shift. We're assaulted by patients and their families. We make life and death decisions with inadequate resources. We work in chronically unsafe and understaffed conditions. And then we get a wellness newsletter and a discount to the hospital gym. 83% of nurses have nothing or close to nothing. This isn't an accident. It's a choice. The healthcare system has chosen to treat nurse trauma as a personal failing instead of an occupational hazard. Because if they admitted it was trauma, they'd have to fix the conditions that are causing it, and that would cost money. Here's 76% that changed everything. So let me walk you through what I found when I mapped burnout against the trauma symptoms across these 5 health and wellness domains. Let's start with the physical domain. And it's not an exhaustive list, but you'll get the idea. In the physical domain, we have exhaustion, insomnia, headaches, GI issues, chronic pain. These aren't burnout symptoms. They're nervous system dysregulation. They're what happens when your body is stuck in survival mode. In the cognitive domain, we have brain fog, memory problems, difficulty concentrating. These aren't work stress. These are trauma-induced cognitive challenges. Your prefrontal cortex goes a little bit offline when you're in threat. In the emotional domain, anxiety, depression, emotional numbness, these aren't personality failings. They're protective adaptations to chronic, unrelenting threat. In the behavioral domain, well, we have being withdrawn, socially isolating, avoidance, substance use, and relationship disturbances. These aren't character flaws, they're survival strategies. Your body is trying to keep you safe and alive. In the existential domain, we have loss of meaning, cynicism, spiritual emptiness, rage at a system that doesn't care. These aren't midlife crises. They're soul wounds from repeated institutional betrayal and moral injury. 76% of what they call burnout is actually trauma symptoms. 76%. This isn't burnout. This is trauma, nurse-specific trauma. And that difference matters because when you've correctly identified root cause, you can finally start to heal it. Because your body never lied. Your body's been screaming truth. So let me reframe every symptom that you've been told is your fault. That dread before your shift, that's not anxiety. That's your nervous system detecting a threat. The insomnia, that's not poor sleep hygiene. That's Low-key hypervigilance. Your body won't rest because it doesn't feel safe. The GI distress. Well, the body can't digest well when it's in survival mode. The emotional numbness, that's not apathy, it's dissociation, disconnection, your body's last-ditch protection from the overwhelm. The rage that comes out of nowhere, that's not anger management issues, that's trapped fight response that has nowhere to go. Your body never lied, the system did. Every symptom that you're experiencing is your body telling you the truth about what's happening to you. The problem isn't that your body is broken. The problem is that the system refuses to hear what your body is saying. It keeps telling you to do more self-care, work on your resilience, and to get better work-life balance. So let's talk about another nurse who I know is Taylor. She was a med-surg nurse at a large urban hospital, 5 years into her practice. And she kept being told that she needed to do better self-care while working in chronically unsafe conditions. A typical shift for Taylor would be, like for most of us, clocking in, getting her assignment, getting report. She was routinely assigned 8 patients, some of whom were prematurely transferred from the step-down unit after being prematurely transferred from ICU. You know the drill. No nursing assistant, no patient care technician, no charge nurse that could help because they had a load of their own. Equipment that doesn't work, IV pumps that keep alarming and misfiring, supplies that run out mid-shift, so you have to go scavenger through other units. Mandatory overtime because every week they're chronically short-staffed, and even when Taylor would say no to these requests, they would guilt and empathy manipulate her. Her PTO requests were repeatedly denied. When she did need to call off sick, it was like going to a trial. Staffing would say or do anything to manipulate her to come into work, even if she had a fever. Workplace violence with no security response. Taylor had been hit, grabbed, spit on, and worse. She reported it, and they told her, well, shrug shoulders, it's just part of the job. Taylor's body was screaming, this is not safe. And they handed her a bundle of online resilience modules to do. They gave her a flyer about mindfulness and a voucher for a free yoga class. When Taylor finally understood that it was trauma, not burnout, everything changed. Not because the conditions had changed. They hadn't. The hospital's still understaffed. The violence is still happening. The gaslighting occurs on the regular. But because she stopped blaming herself and started addressing the real root cause injury of nurse-specific trauma. She stopped thinking she wasn't resilient enough. She started understanding that no amount of resilience can protect you from a system that's designed to do you harm. And that changed everything. Let's pause here for just a moment. You might be wondering, do I really have nurse-specific trauma? Or perhaps could it be that it's just burnout? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is to take the free nurse trauma assessment. You can do that right now at drlorrelaws.com/assessment. It takes under 2 minutes, and I will send you a tailored report with guidance as to where you are on the nurse trauma spectrum, and importantly, what steps you can take next. So go ahead and push pause on this podcast while you're thinking of it, and I'll be here when you get back. Now, why this changes everything is because when you name the actual wound, you can heal it. That's the paradigm shift. When you believe it's burnout, you just try to cope harder, rest more, manage your stress better. You think, if I could just get better at self-care, if I can just build more resilience, if I can just find better work-life balance, everything will be fine. Well, what happens is you stop blaming yourself for not being strong enough, not being resilient enough, not being enough in general. When you understand it's trauma, everything shifts. You stop trying to survive the unsurvivable. You start healing the actual injury. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And instead start asking, what's happening to me? And that question changes everything, because that's where everything becomes possible. You stop blaming yourself for a normal response to abnormal conditions. Let me say that again. Your responses are normal. It's the conditions that are abnormal. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it is supposed to do when faced with chronic threat. It's protecting you, keeping you alive. The problem is that isn't your nervous system. The problem is that you are working in unsafe conditions much of the time in every sense of the word. Your midbrain is detecting threats to your safety because there are threats many times throughout the day. What changes is that you start targeting the real root cause at the nervous system and cellular level. not just managing symptoms, not just coping with stress, actually healing the dysregulation that is happening in your body. You give your body what it actually needs instead of what a wellness culture tells you it should need. Your body doesn't need another resilience module. It doesn't necessarily need better work-life balance. It needs nervous system safety and regulation. It needs to feel safe again. You start to realize that you're not weak, you're not broken, and you're not failing. You're just injured. And injuries can heal. I've seen it hundreds of times. Nurses who thought they were done, who thought they'd never feel like themselves again, who were ready to leave the profession. But they learned the truth. They learned that healing the real wound, and they came back to themselves. Not because their working conditions magically improved, but because they stopped trying to self-care their way out of trauma and started actual trauma healing. The path forward, we're going to talk about the science that they didn't teach you on all of these topics and more. The nervous system mechanisms, the types of nurse-specific trauma, your body's innate capacity for healing, and the behavioral patterns that result as a result of repeated nurse-specific traumatization. This is the foundation that you're going to be getting, and then we will move into weekly micro-healing journeys with a different nurse who is sharing their story each and every week. This is where your healing actually begins, not with another self-care checklist or resilience model. Sorry, let's try again. Not with another self-care checklist or a resilience model, but with the truth. It's not burnout, it's nurse trauma. And now that you know that, well, you can't unknow it. Time to take your first step. If you're listening to this and everything clicked for you, I invite you to do something right now. And not tomorrow, not when you finish your shift or you get done with whatever you're doing, not when you have more time, but right now. Because your body has been waiting for you to hear this truth. And now that you have it, it's ready to show you exactly what it needs. So what I'd like for you to understand is that for years, maybe decades, you've been trying to quote unquote fix yourself, trying to be more resilient, trying harder, doing more self-care, and it hasn't worked. Not because you're broken, but because you're not trying hard enough. Oh, sorry, that was wrong. And it hasn't worked, not because you're broken and not because you're not trying hard enough, but because you've been treating the wrong thing. You can't self-care your way out of trauma response. You can't resilience train your way out of nervous system dysregulation, but you can heal once you know what you're actually healing from. So here's today's action. Take the free nurse trauma assessment. You can find that at drlorrelaws.com. Assessment. We'll drop the link in the show notes. It takes just 2 minutes to get clarity on what's actually happening in your body and how it maps to nurse-specific trauma symptoms. It will show you exactly how that trauma is showing up in all domains of your life: physical, cognitive, emotional, behavioral, and existential. And then I'll send you a free personalized report, not a bunch of generic wellness fluff, but a specific report that gives guidance based on your unique trauma signature. No sales tactics, no upsells, no shenanigans, just real support from the nurse neuroscientist right here who conducted the research, wrote the book, and founded the nonprofit. From someone who understands what you have been through, what you're going through, because I've been there. I've done this research and I've helped hundreds of nurses, well, thousands actually, just like you. So your body never lied. The system did. It's time to start listening to what your body has been trying to tell you all along. You're not alone in this. There are tens of thousands of us, and there is an evidence-based pathway forward. From my healer's heart to yours, and until next time, namaste. All right, this is an outro, but I think I am recording separate outros, but I'm just going to throw it in because this is our first one and I'm not quite sure. This isn't theory. This is evidence-based research that the healthcare industry has ignored for decades because addressing it would require them to change. You don't have to wait for them. Start healing the root cause today. Take the nurse trauma assessment at drlorrelaws.com/assessment. And join me next week when we dive into the science that they're not teaching you about your nervous system and why everything you have tried so far has failed. Until then, remember, your body never lied. The system did.